Welcome to another STARS webinar. I am David Earn, Director of Programs and Communication at STARS. For those of you who are here for the first time, STARS webinars are interactive discussions about future-oriented topics such as leadership, geopolitics, technology, climate change, and health. A select group of people is attending the webinar live, asking their own questions, and hundreds of people will watch STARS webinars later on as a recording in STARS Insights or on YouTube. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Today we talk with STARS alumna, Dr. Zeina MOHANNA, about the humanitarian situation in Lebanon and how the country is trying to find a way forward. Zeina has been active in humanitarian development and in academia for more than 15 years. She is a board member of Amel Association International, an NGO providing support to the most underprivileged populations in Lebanon, and she consults various UN agencies such as IOM, UNFPA, and OHCHR, just to name a few. Zeina is also a founding member of the NGO Disama, and she serves as president of the STARS Middle East Alumni Chapter. Her work focuses primarily on service provision, awareness and policy advocacy in the support of migrants, counter-trafficking, support to refugees, youth leadership, and women's empowerment. Zeina has received a PhD in political studies about citizenship and human rights in Lebanon from the American University of Beirut, where she currently also teaches at the Political Sciences and Public Administration Department. Good morning to you, Zeina, and thank you for speaking in today's webinar.
Good morning, David. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Really a pride to be a STARS alumni and to try to carry further the efforts in the Middle East, despite it's so much challenge nowadays, but hopefully for more leadership and excellence and for the future generation, for a brighter future.
We now have 30 minutes to discuss with Zeina. I will take the privilege to ask the first couple questions. In the meantime, if you have any questions for Zeina, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your question. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. About 2 months ago, a massive explosion rocked Beirut, killing hundreds, injuring thousands, and sending a shockwave through an already embattled country. Since the violent explosion, Lebanon has found no peace. So to kick off the webinar, Zeina, can I ask you to put this crisis in perspective? First of all, why is Lebanon in crisis?
Yeah, one joke that you always say, the more you know about Lebanon, the less you understand, which is because there are many factors to look at, but really Lebanon now is currently facing unprecedented number of crises. And always the Lebanese start with a sense of humor as a coping mechanism to the standards, because we're saying that usually we have 3 levels of difficulty: low, medium, high. And now that we're adding after high Lebanon, because the number of crises are unbelievable. Being in the Arab world, Lebanon has 4 million Lebanese almost in Lebanon, 16 million estimated outside Lebanon and the diaspora. But Lebanon has proved a big solidarity by welcoming 1.5 million Syrian refugees, which is the highest refugee per capita in the world. Almost 250,000 Palestinian refugees in informal camps and outside camps. Almost another 250,000 migrant workers coming from Africa and Southeast Asia, and other people around. So Lebanon is quite diverse, adding to it 18 sects, which is the problem of that was there since long time, where this caused a civil war that lasted almost 16 years and ended in 89. But definitely some of the repercussions are still up until today. But the localization of Lebanon between the 3 continents made it really very attracting to the world, especially that we have a port side and we are linkages. So we always say Lebanese who come to Lebanon, the foreigners who come to Lebanon, they don't need to have another language because everybody speaks at least another language. So, but the main problem is that now really we can't count how many crises we're facing. To put first that we have a monetary crisis. Our currency devaluated almost 80%. There is a capital control, so the banks are blocking the money of the people, especially the US dollars. They're only allowing to retrieve small amounts with limitation of the Lebanese lira. People can't afford the goods anymore. We have the blast that you mentioned, which was huge. So Lebanon, we said this is the third biggest explosion in history after Hiroshima, Nagasaki, then Beirut. It had left 7,000 injured, 200 dead, around 30 missing, and more than 300,000 households affected, where we know that up until today there are many people displaced, not to add to the collective trauma. So children are having problems to sleep at night, people are injured, they got the glass in the face, etc. It was outrageous. So the monetary, the blast with the psychological and all the casualties, we have the COVID, definitely. We did well at the beginning. We ranked top 18. At the beginning, we had only plus 15 cases per day, but now we reached plus 1,500 per day, which is for the size of Lebanon, is similar to the case of Italy. So we're not doing good at all. In a time where we have the economic crisis next to it, where our hospitalization and access to care is depleted. Also already hospitals are saturated. The economic crisis that definitely the world is also facing it gets with it unemployment. Many shops already closed, many people at unemployment, which is putting a crisis on food security, access to food and to adequate conditions of living. Adding to it the social crisis, a study was made around a month and a half ago saying people in Lebanon, 55% are below the poverty line, and we believe that now it's even more. We're receiving in Amel PhD people, journalists asking for food, which we never saw in history. Definitely a political crisis after the revolution of October 17, 2019, where the prime minister was down. Yesterday, the same person who resigned went back. So we are back at status quo. People are down, but we hope that this at least did raise accountability and is going to bring a better wave and reform. Definitely a security crisis with problem of economy. Crimes are increasing, theft are increasing. We heard that there are 300,000 files of people trying to immigrate and leave the country, where already many people already left, which is accompanied by a brain drain. Many medical doctors, very high-end people already left. So you can see the picture, which is definitely based on many political challenges, but we're doing bad, yeah.
Your organization, Amel, is an important actor to respond to the humanitarian aspects of these crises in Lebanon. Can you explain to us what Amel is currently doing? Where do you put the focus?
We're trying to work on multiple levels because Amel has been there since 41 years and it's a Nobel Prize nominee and also a human rights recipient of several prizes in the region. But what distinguishes Amel is that we are really non-sectarian. We're not affiliated to anybody because we have an approach of non-discrimination. Every person receives the support based on humanitarian need without any discrimination. So because we want to reach the biggest number of people and try to make a difference wherever we can. So definitely Amel has 13 programs where we're speaking about support to refugees, migrants, counter-trafficking, access to health, livelihood, support to elderly, child protection, education, Amel House of Human Rights, etc. Where and also lately we added mental health, sexual and reproductive health, gender-based violence. So we're trying through our specialized teams and through our 25 centers. And just yesterday we signed for a new center that is located in the blast-affected area in Ashrafiyeh, which is we're trying as much as possible to be in the vulnerable communities to support people with access to all the services that they need. So definitely we're working on development. Amel already throughout its history, because it was founded in civil war, we have a long experience in emergency response, but definitely we're doing relief support. We're distributing food, non-food items, mattresses, diapers for elderly, for children, hygiene kits, but really it has been long. The last time we did an emergency response was during the war in 2006, which only lasted for 33 days. But now we are in a constant emergency since February 2020. The team is a big salute to all the fighters Amel is on the front line. Our health, because we have primary healthcare centers, we didn't close any day. We know that we are putting our people at risk, but unfortunately, this is our humanitarian mission to support others. Sadly, several got affected with COVID, but we're trying to limit it with the PPEs, with all the protection means. But we're trying to work on all the levels, making a difference to all the sectors, being refugees, migrants, Lebanese, children, elderly, doing all the activities needed to uplift the performance, because we know that the government now is almost absent and there is a big role needed. And even Amel, because we have a long experience in the health, we are co-lead with the WHO for the response of the blast, so nationally. So we, for many months, we were the ones who were handling the call center, the national call center, to receive all the calls for the COVID. We just did the, now WHO took over at the beginning of this month, but we're supporting technically the Ministry of Public Health. We are part of the National Surveillance Unit to do the tracing for the COVID cases. Definitely lots of awareness, lots of response, lots of prevention. But definitely the main challenge is the resources are so much limited. The needs are big. The sad part is that with this economic problem, we can't access funds. The blast, the positive side of the blast is that it allowed for lots of the nations to come, which uplifted a bit. The solidarity has been beautiful from all over the world, being the diaspora or the international donors. We hope that Lebanon will not be left alone, because we're not seeing that's going to become better anytime soon. But really, Lebanon has never been in such situation. Even the older generation who lived the civil war said Lebanon has not been that bad. It's too much to take in one plate.
You mentioned in your opening statement that Lebanon hosts the highest proportion of refugees per capita in the world, including over 1.5 million Syrian refugees. What is the situation in the refugee camps?
Lebanon, due to its historical background, that Lebanon in history was part of Greater Syria, there was like mutual support for the Syrian crisis. But later, after a couple, because we knew it started in 2011, where the borders are almost open. So Syrians can come and Lebanese can go even with an ID. They don't need a visa or so. There's like a mutual understanding. But later, when the numbers increased, there was more regulations set. But definitely this is part of solidarity, because also Syria supported Lebanon in lots of wars and welcoming lots of people and traveling through their airport whenever needed. But the situation is bad, because lots of donations came to the Syrian refugees, and with time there was a donor fatigue, and the spotlight was diverted, noting that refugees are still challenged, and there are some challenge for them to go back home. So they're not doing great. We know people are living in tents since 7-8 years, and in some of the areas which are very, very cold. So this is not great, but we are seeing that some waves of refugees or migrant domestic workers wanting to go back, because really Lebanon is not providing any adequate conditions of living, and the currency is becoming too expensive. Like there is speculation that almost the middle class disappeared, because now it's only about surviving. So we're back to having a shelter, access to food, access to health. The middle class is at this stage. Even our primary healthcare centers is used to receive vulnerable population. Now we're receiving staff of banks. We're receiving a different class that is showing clearly that situation is doing bad. So we're trying our best.
I'd like to circle back to the root causes of the crisis. You mentioned that Lebanon is made up of 18 sects. So I'm wondering, do you see corruption as a direct result of this system of sectarian power sharing in Lebanon? Is it, in a way, is corruption endemic to this kind of political system?
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. I think Felix also pinpointed the same thing, and it's valuable to try to understand why this is happening. Lebanon got its independence from the French mandate in 1943, where it was from under French mandate from 26 till 43, which is comparably a new state. But the problem is that back then, the constitution that was set was more of a copy, a little bit modified copy of the French Republic that was set on the size of Lebanon, which clearly does not fit its societal structure. So there's a gap between what the typology of the Lebanese culture with what is the system that is there, where the sectarian system is so much rooted. And sadly, our parliament is based on, after the Civil War, there was a Ta'if agreement, which did set the new rules of the new modified constitution, which is in 1990, which looked back into these differences, but still the sectarian division is rooted in the structure, which is not allowing a flexibility of having people coming based on qualifications. Or so it's, and this is where the parliament is, we call it the consociational democracy, where people, all the parties need to agree before any decision happens. And it's not based on social justice, just based on coexistence to make that this pluralistic society is represented all the time, where we know that models like Switzerland, Belgium, other countries succeeded to move with pluralistic societies, but not getting stagnated. So, and in this last constitution, there is a proposition to have a Senate, which never happened into reality, which definitely can make a difference by making sure that the Senate is based on constitutional democracy, but leaving the parliament based on qualification to ensure that they respond to the needs of the people. Another issue is that the way that the ruling elite is formed, we call it oligarchy, where the people, decision makers, put first their personal interest before the public interest. And this is the door for corruption. People in power and representation should be selfless, should be leaders to make a change, not be leaders with aims to keep the power for themselves. And we heard a couple of days ago, one of the sons of these leaders, because in general, we have 7 leaders which are 7 heads of sects that are governing. And one of the son of them said, I don't want to get into politics, but my family wants it because this is a family business and we need to preserve it and we need to preserve power. And this is how they see it. They see it as a business, and this is getting them lots of funds to themselves. So definitely corruption to the optimum. And this is where the revolution came. And the great thing that the revolution did, despite all the impact that it had on the economy and other things, is that it did re-put accountability into stake. So now accountability is there. There is a watchdog towards their implementation. And definitely the people in the revolution need to unite and be more politically mobilized, but at least accountability started. Before, they were putting their personal interests, they were speaking about lots of money that disappeared and that was taken outside, but now at least accountability is there, they are watched, and there is no room other than doing reform. They don't have a choice because the situation is so bad. So despite the ex-prime minister came back after he resigned and we are back at square one, but now he has so much challenges to address that are needed to have a reform. And one of the also the major rooted problem is the lack of integrity and impartiality of the judiciary system. So even if a court case happens and somebody is well connected, they lift the phone, they ask them, please, this is for me, and the decision sometimes changes based on this intervention, which is very, very sad. So we need to ensure an independence of the judicial system, where even the MPs and the ministers are penalized whenever they do a mistake. And this is the start of accountability to ensure governance and respect for people's rights.
If we take this a step forward, this leads us to the question from Felix Epli. Felix is the CEO and managing partner of Know-How Transfer. He's asking, how should a political solution look like? I know that's a very big question, but from your point of view, what could be done to reform the public sector and to improve the system of governance?
Definitely. Definitely, there is a problem in the structure. of how the Lebanon is formed. And now one of the most requests from the people revolting is to ask for technocrats. But we know in reflection that if we asked for technocrats, it's not only about the people and power, it's also about the systems, because the systems are corrupt. So there's a need to reform the system, strengthen the institutions of the state, where people are equal under it. So there is justice and equality for people accessing for their services, not based on clientelism and confessionalism, but based on rights and duties, where everybody is equal under the law and we ensure rule of law. Another point is definitely, as we said, impartiality and integrity of the judiciary. This is very important, especially to penalize the representatives. And we can't say that everybody's bad. Some of the people in power are good, but they are not able to move forward because the system is not allowing them. But one window of hope is that in history, we had a president of the republic called President Fuad Shahab, who did a great attempt of modernization in Lebanon, who came and who said, I want to serve the people. And he did more than 40 projects of institutions of the state to strengthen them, to ensure that appointment is based on qualification. He did the green project, he did the social security, he did the audit department, a national center for research, etc. He did lots of things which strengthen the system from down, which if this is available, anybody who's coming with some qualification is able to do a change. And this is what's needed at this point. So the reform should be from the roots and not only, so we need to bring people who are able to do this and work on improving the system and having people who care about others and want to make this change in an effective manner.
If we stay on the topic of high politics, we have two questions from Bruno Gehrig. He is a board member of Merki Baumann, former chairman of Swiss and Swiss Life, and former board member of Roche, UBS, and the Swiss National Bank. His first question concerns the role of external powers in resolving the crisis in Lebanon. He's asking, is it correct to assume that there will be no progress to improve the situation in Lebanon unless Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the US find a common solution? In other words, can Lebanon not solve its problems internally?
Yeah, I think this is the heart of the discussion. Nothing happens without analysis on geopolitics. And we know that everything's happening, being in Lebanon or other countries, and especially that the region is in turmoil. We can't fragment what's happening in Lebanon with the elections of the US. We can't fragment what's happening in Lebanon with the political power and the challenge between the US and China and Russia being on one side and having Iran. So we know that the world is fragmented into two parts, which is one is more of the ex-communists, more of socialists, and on the right, fundamental right people. So there are power in the world, and Lebanon is in the middle, is exactly in the middle, because we used to have something called the Group of 8 March, which is following Iran, Syria, and this group. And we had the Group of 14 March, which was following the US, UK, and their allies, where definitely there is a big problem with the presence also of Israel in the region, that where Lebanon was occupied by Israel for some time. And this is still a problem to fight the land and ensure that there is no occupation. And then definitely we can't forget the Palestinian cause, the refugees, the Syria problem. So there are lots of things interlinked that are there, but definitely we can't fragment things from what is happening on the international level. Now Lebanon, because we know there was a French intervention where President Macron came here to try to support Lebanon, but also we know that the US also are very interested because Schenker is coming every now and then to follow up on what's happening. And so now Lebanon is being between two lines. Would it fall under the arm of the US and the Europe as it was always the case, or will it fall under Iran and Russia and its allies? So definitely what's happening here is linked to this. One thing worth noting is that most probably we have oil in the sea. And this is where the French company Total came and they're digging, and they're saying that most probably this is off an aim, plus the port side. And this blast, at the beginning they said that it is an incident of neglect, etc. But other analyses are saying that no, this could have been done on purpose, because somebody saw how do we call it, something thrown on the ammonium to pump, and analysis of if Israel did that, because there are some analysis that the activity of the port of Beirut, that is taking a big chunk of the region, is aimed to be taken to Haifa port to decrease. So lots of analysis happening. So there to be taken. One of the opportunities is that if the oil is there and they are sold, money might come to address the economic situation and the monetary situation, and at least bring dollars or euros to uplift the performance and get us out of this crisis. So now the crisis in Lebanon is being compared to the crisis of Cyprus and Greece, unfortunately.
Let's briefly take Mr. Geric's second question about Hezbollah. He would like to know, what are the factors that have contributed to the present strength of Hezbollah?
Hezbollah is, Lebanon, if we want to go back, Lebanon has always been having lots of militias since the civil war. So every sect and every party almost has their own militias. Some of them were dismantled, and some of them are dormant, and some of them are still there. Hezbollah stayed up until 2000, fighting strongly on the southeastern borders, because this is the border with occupied Palestine and Israel, to preserve the land for not having another occupation, because there is still a discussion on some farms, which are called Shab'a farms, that are still not freed. But definitely, because every now and then there are still planes that are coming to discover what's happening in the Lebanese lands. So the main aim of Hezbollah is to protect the lands and ensure that there is no occupation anymore. Sorry, I missed, maybe there was the question. What was it exactly?
What are the sources of strength for Hezbollah?
Sources of strength. Yeah, so definitely Hezbollah is supported by Iran, but Hezbollah is internal and has its own mandate internally to protect the land. So this is the main aim. But with time, as it happened with all the others, they got into the executive and the legislative branch. So they have MPs and they have also ministers that are there. It's true that this is a big discussion, not only locally, but also internationally, because definitely Hezbollah in 2006, with the war that happened, it was a big defeat to Israel for the intervention that happened, which shows their strength again. So this is one of the sources of concern that are around the world.
We can take one more question from the audience before we have to wrap up. The question comes from Fadi Abu Chamra, who is an activist in Beirut. Here's Fadi's question. Do you foresee any hope with the allocation of Hariri again as prime minister, and the possibility of a new government with regards to the efforts fighting corruption, restoring the economy, and helping to recover from the blast?
To tell you the truth, yeah, and Fadi is a big compatriot in activism and political efforts to try to push forward for a better system. I think, despite that many people are feeling down, that the comeback of Hariri is a big defeat, that all the blood that was lost, all the prizes, all the economic issues, all the immigrants that left due to this revolution and other problems, now we're back at having the same person who resigned who's back in office. Definitely one challenge for him is to form the cabinet. So many people are speculating that he might not succeed to bring a national unity. But definitely if he's going to continue, he is set at so many challenges. This country is doing so bad that he has a lot on his plate. And I think this is a huge test of accountability for him to show that he can do it. And I think if he can do it, he's going to be strongly defeated because people are doing so bad. There is a need for huge reform. هلا MP Hariri was behind SADR, which is a promise from France to bring money if the ruling elite show that they can do reform. So this is one opportunity that if we continue forward, it might help out. But definitely that I think one thing that might be good for a rule of law and accountability is that he is set as at a huge test. So now it's not only about being happy with power, they have no choice but providing services and rights because the country is doing bad at all levels.
We are unfortunately running out of time, but I would like to ask you two final questions if you allow.
Sure.
Lebanon is famous for its resilience. It has survived civil wars, as you mentioned, foreign invasions, and big influxes of refugees. But now, due to the multiple crises you talked about, an ever-growing number of people are sliding into absolute poverty, and neither reforms nor elections in any real sense are in sight. So what gives you hope that in 5 years from now, Lebanon will be in a better place than today?
Yeah, and I think I want to answer the last question that was raised in relation to Lebanese women. And the light of hope is that definitely the Lebanese population are at a better stage than its ruling elite. And this is a big hope. We had lately 110 women who ran for the parliamentary elections. We have many qualified activists that are there and that are pushing hard. There is a need for them to group them together and to put the national aim first to push forward. The new generation that is have access to technology, the world is between their hands just and having their mobile phone. There are lots of means now for accountability that are there. Education is there, despite the COVID impact, but definitely as a political scientist, I definitely see that this is going to allow for more socialist approaches to address humanitarian issues. So the humanity is really put into question because now the role of the state is really questioned not only in Lebanon, everywhere in the world. If we don't have a strong health system, if we don't have support, social security to address what happens to the lockdown when people who are paid per day are not being able to take it, etc., the role of the state is brought into the question. We can't just rely on the private sector to survive. So this is an opportunity that is set there. What happened in Lebanon, to my feeling, should have happened a long time ago. People were passive, people were trying to find alternative means. It's very good that accountability is being shaken. The price is high, definitely, but hopefully we need just to stay optimistic that this should lead to more humanitarian approaches to strengthen the departments of the state to build a stronger state forward.
As you answered those two questions in one answer, I'd like to ask you one more question. And I'd like to end on a more personal note. What has been your motivation to become a leader in the humanitarian field in particular? And what keeps you going?
Yeah, I just want to highlight my pride of attending STARS and having a strong connection to benefit lots of people from the region who are directly and indirectly trying to do a change for leadership and to make reform. And we started a chapter in the Middle East, and hopefully we're going to have a bigger role forward. I do have, I feel that I have a personal internal commitment for humanity. Our region is so much challenged. I was lucky to be part of a family that is carrying this mission since a long time. I know it requires a lot of effort and a lot of putting down some opportunities of financial growth. But for me, humanity matters. There are people that nobody's looking at them, that needs to be looked, and all of their needs need to be addressed. Humanity matters. Every person, this is what we address in Amel Association, human dignity. The dignity of the people need to be respected, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their political background, regardless of how they think, regardless of their skin color, of their race. As long as they are human beings, they need to access minimum standards to live in dignity and peace. So we need just to keep faith that Hopefully things will get better. Things will improve. We need just to push into the right direction, and hopefully I can see that sometime soon Lebanon will have opportunity to bring youth to political representation, more women in decision making. We have many qualified women, but the door is not open. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully things will roll down in the right direction.
With that, I would like to thank you very much, Zeina, for your time and for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for all the STARS team. It's a pleasure, and hopefully one day we're gonna celebrate some great things for moving forward and learn from this week's experience of pluralistic society also.
I would also like to thank all our alumni who participated in today's webinar. In the next STARS webinar on the 30th of October, in a week from now, we discuss with Professor Dr. Volker Pertes, Senior Advisor and former Director of the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. We'll discuss how Europe can secure its strategic autonomy, relaunch its foreign policy, and become a global player in a multipolar world. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, take care and stay healthy. Thank you and goodbye.